Welcome to the Red Talk on managing ambiguity during Corona, during COVID-19. 1 year into the pandemic, it's a global fact that mental health is affected. There's a rise in the number of people having anxiety, showing signs of depression, and the feelings of powerlessness and not being in control are widespread. I'm here, Suzanne Akasha from the Reference Center for Psychosocial Support, and Sarah Harrison, who's a mental health professional, will talk us through what we can do to manage ambiguity in this time of uncertainty. So, Sarah, first of all, would you present yourself, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for the invitation as well, IFRC, to join the platform. So as Ian said, I'm Sarah Harrison. I'm actually originally from the UK as a psychologist, and I now work at the IFRC Reference Center for Psychosocial Support in Denmark in Copenhagen. And as Ian said, I'm a mental health professional by training and by practice. And I now, similar to Ian, work as a technical advisor at the center as well.
Yeah, and let's dig it right into our topic today, managing ambiguity during Corona times. So will you introduce us to the concept of ambiguity, please?
Yes, so ambiguity it sounds a very big word, and it sounds a bit complicated, and it needs to be demystified a bit. But there's actually 4 components around ambiguity. One thing, as you said, is in relation to uncertainty and how we manage it, and being able to sit and to be able to reflect on uncertainty in one's life. And that's particularly critical now with relation to COVID-19. And uncertainty means not knowing. Or not having the complete facts, the complete information. And then the second aspect is you have to work and you have to make decisions in your daily life without having that complete information. Or sometimes that information is coming to you and it's contradictory. So we can have multiple different news sources giving us information about coronavirus, about the restrictions in your particular country. And sometimes you don't know how to manage that information. And then the third part is there's multiple events that are outside of our control. And it's an emergency by definition. That's a definition of an emergency. It's outside any individual or any country's power to control. So it's also being able to reflect on the fact that there are things that I can control and there are things that I can't control. And then the last part of ambiguity is problem solving. So which problems can I solve? Which problems are solvable, are within my power to control, and which problems are greater than me and are things that I, again, have to live with, and I have to be able to sit with that unease and that uncertainty as well.
Right. And just let me get that straight, because you have ambiguity where there's things, and let me ask you to unpack it a bit more. So how is ambiguity different if you're faced with ambiguous feelings? How is that different from being in a dilemma?
So I think the ambiguous feelings are more, they're more inward looking. So feelings are within a person. So it might be I'm not able to achieve the things that I want to particularly achieve. I can't follow all of my procedures or my protocols to provide treatment to somebody or to provide care to somebody. And that makes me feel unhappy. It makes me feel uneasy. It makes me feel scared or anxious within the body. Whereas a dilemma is more outward facing, and it's more like a practical issue that you have to address. So it can be in the form of a decision that you need to make. It's more proactive. It's a behavioral issue, whereas ambiguity is actually more related to values, to feelings, to acceptance as well, and being able to live with that unease internally.
Oh, let's return to that a bit later. But right now, I just want to tell you, Sarah, that we have people watching from Ecuador, Nepal, Germany, Senegal, Haiti, Somaliland, Kenya, Lebanon, Indonesia, Dubai, Bangladesh, Switzerland, Iran, Mozambique, Uganda, Guinea. Audience, it's awesome. Yes. It's really
Hello
impressive.
World. Yes.
Hello world. We're happy that you're here with us. Do type in questions, send in questions should you have any, because right now you touched upon something that was really of interest to our audience if we have staff and volunteers. So what is it that make these trying times so difficult for staff and volunteers, and why would they have ambiguous feelings?
So if very concretely, if you're part of the response in your respective country to COVID-19, whether you're in a clinic or a hospital or an ambulance, or if you're doing community level work, you often have procedures or protocols or that you've been trained on and that you have to do, or approaches or techniques you have to use. And then you're faced with the reality of when you engage with somebody or you engage in providing treatment or support, and you find that maybe you can't provide that in the same standard or the same way, or you can't answer someone with a direct response. When are these restrictions going to end? When am I going to get a vaccination? They're more philosophical type questions that there isn't necessarily an answer or a hard date that volunteers and staff can give as a response. And that makes staff and volunteers feel uneasy, because we want to be able to help. As a volunteer in the Red Cross Red Crescent movement, your motivation is a willingness to support and to help people and to accompany them when they're going through a crisis or distress. And if you can't provide that direct answer, if you can't provide that high level of quality care that you're used to providing, there's a disconnect, there's an imbalance. And it's that imbalance that's the ambiguity within people as well.
So just let me follow that path a bit, because I think this is really interesting and could be for the national societies. How do you support staff and volunteers who are faced with this, having to live through this kind of ambiguity?
Yeah.
How can we support?
And I think it's particularly critical now because almost everybody's going through it. It's not as if it's an emergency happening in one country or in one part of a country, like a natural disaster. This is happening globally in real time in all parts of the world. One area is, and this again is more working internally with yourself, is in terms of being forgiving to yourself and being compassionate with yourself and saying, I don't know the answer to this question that the person is asking me, or I cannot respond to the best of the top quality in terms of providing treatment or support because it's an emergency, and that is okay. It's okay for me to be able to say to the person, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. And then to not feel guilty yourself and to not beat yourself up and say, I'm not doing a good job, but is able to sit with that unease and say, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm doing the best I can, and that's okay. And it's self-compassion. It's also looking more like forgiveness with oneself and accepting that what you're doing is actually good enough. It's in an emergency context. I think volunteers are often reporting, particularly youth volunteers, of reporting feelings of powerlessness and feeling helpless with regards to the pandemic. And so things that give you a sense of control, again, they tend to be very small things that add up in your day-to-day. So, for example, I mentioned at the beginning, there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't control. And one thing that you cannot control, for example, are the public health restrictions in place because of COVID-19, and when they will be lifted and when they will be more strict again. So you can't control that. That's a government decision. That's a public health authority decision. But what you can control is what you do with that information. So I cannot go out after 8 o'clock at night because there's a curfew in my country. But everything I do before 8 o'clock in a day is in my control. So it's a little bit about reframing. So a rule or a restriction only tells you something that you cannot do, but then leaves wide open the possibility of how you spend the rest of your time during that day.
So if you are a manager, it's really important that you have volunteers and they are going through this period like the rest of the world of having feelings of not doing enough, not knowing enough, living with this ambiguity. First of all, you can encourage people to really think about, that's a mental thing, think about how well they have done and what they have done and what they, feeling okay about this given the situation. And secondly, also focus on what you can control. You could write lists. You could do a lot of things. Do you have other ideas for how you can focus on what you can control?
Yeah.
Give us more tips, please.
So ambiguity is also, responding to ambiguity is like you said, with regards to regaining a sense of control, it comes a little bit from a branch of something called positive psychology, where it's very much not another branch of psychology. Psychoanalysis tends to be a bit backward looking, problems in the past and how it affects you in the present day. Positive psychology is about saying past is not so important, it's about today and moving forward, what you can do. So in regaining a sense of control, or if you are reflecting on your day at the end, maybe when you're lying in bed, or if you have a quiet 5 minutes before you go to sleep, rather than saying, I didn't do that today, or today was a horrible day because of X, Y, and Z, focus on things that went well that day. It can be very small things, things you enjoyed doing. I enjoyed walking the dog today. I had a lovely bath this afternoon. I cooked some lovely food. The children went to bed on time relatively smoothly, no arguments, no fighting. And that went well today. So you can do this little mental quick reflection and say, this went well today. These 3 things worked today. And that makes it a good day. That makes it okay.
But you can also use it with your team or with your coworkers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What was a good thing that happened today? How was it to be out supporting people during Corona? Yeah. What went well?
Exactly.
Really good
and you
idea.
can do it in team meetings as well. You could begin a team meeting or a volunteer meeting like that.
That would set the tone.
It would set the tone, exactly. Yeah.
Really
so
good.
So again, focusing on the positive aspects. And then I think sometimes people feel overwhelmed by the day, or overwhelmed with the response. Then they can be very tired and they can be a bit disoriented and just feeling a bit helpless and a bit lost. So some of the techniques that you can do are things that help you find a sense of place and situate you within your context again. So a very simple exercise, and Ia, you will know this from psychomotricity and psychomotor therapy, is a quick 30-second exercise you can do is to a grounding exercise, as we call it, where you can place your feet on the ground, kind of hip width apart, and then you can also feel as if you're like a tree and you're pushing roots into the floor, and that the floor is holding you up, and how that feels on the full length of your feet, on the balls of your feet, on the toes, on the heel, for example. And you can also take a breath and then relax again and just feel the roots going into the floor and the weight of the floor holding you up. And it's a simple grounding exercise that literally roots you to where you are and puts you
I can feel it.
In context.
It works. It works.
It really works.
I hope that the audience is doing it too with you. That was a very nice instruction. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have even more people watching. So let me just tell you that we've been joined by people from Cameroon, Algeria, Lithuania, Ethiopia, from USA, Tanzania, Nepal, Vietnam, Indonesia, Spain, South Africa, Pakistan, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, and India. What an outreach, Sarah.
Wow. So some of you are up very early and some of you are up very late as well. So thank you. I am humbled, yes.
But there's another thing about ambiguity that I think is really interesting that I would like you to talk a bit more about, because it has also the double meaning, and then there's this about not being quite clear. You don't know. So it's open to interpretation, and we can't be sure that our interpretation is the right one. Yes. We also get conflicting information. Yes. How do we best process and live with that?
So it's very much about living with the unease, as you said.
Living with the unease.
With unease. So it's the ways you can do that is to say, okay, again, I can't control the information. If it's a hard fact coming to me, increase in numbers, for example, of infections or numbers of deaths in the country. But again, I can reflect how that affects me. So I can put a label on that feeling. I am feeling sad because of this, or I'm feeling depressed or low. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And if you label that feeling, you reflect on it by labeling it, and you also begin to accept it. Because part of managing ambiguity is to not give a judgment on what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So because you don't know, you can feel guilty particularly if you're in a role where you're being asked to help somebody. So it's not about feeling guilty. It's about sitting with that unease and saying, I don't know, I have incomplete information. It makes me anxious. But actually making me anxious is okay. I can accept the anxiety and I can still be able to move forward and do my job. So labeling your feelings of unease or whatever they might be, labeling your emotions is a way of accepting them and literally sitting with them. If you imagine you have like the sitting in your belly or your stomach in a big vase or a big pot. So it's something that you carry around with you, but it's something that isn't affecting how you function as well.
And I think there was also a very interesting point in what you said. First of all, that you acknowledge that this is information, it's not the truth. And that can also be open to interpretation.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that how do we handle people who are really dead sure that they have information that we, being in the Red Crescent, believe is not true, believe to be false information, that, for instance, inoculations, they are out to harm us. How do we handle that?
The challenge we have nowadays with information is that we have it from so many different platforms, and it's coming to us a lot quicker than what it was in the past, and that's partly the internet, partly social media. So being able to evaluate the information presented to you is about finding information from multiple sources, from the most credible sources that you can find. So your health authority, for example, public service announcements from a government or from a vaccination rollout. And then if you are receiving information from other sources and it's contradictory, it's doing that critical reflection and saying, okay, who's writing that piece of information? Why are they putting it out there? What's their message behind that information? As well. So again, it's that critical reflection that happens internally. And the more points of information that you can get that are from the credible sources, trusted sources, the stronger you can be in evaluating that information and saying, yes, this is a correct message. As IFRC, we also have a list of kind of key messages that we have in relation to the vaccinations. That we can, so that we are all speaking with the same voice when we go out to a community, and we do campaigns to support vaccination rollouts in country, or campaigns to destigmatize something. And those sticking to that message is quite critical, because it's just as confusing if you're a community member and you're being told different conflicting pieces of information as well.
That's right. And I liked very much when you gave us concrete examples of how to handle ambiguous feelings. So I would like to know if you have more good examples of what we can do.
Yeah, so another very short exercise that you can do as well, again, about trying to regain a sense of control. And again, to place yourself in context and to help you understand the sense of place around you, is called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. And you can do it whilst you're sitting down, or you could also do it lying in a bed, or if you're just at your desk in the office, or standing up by a window if you're at home as well. And it's to label 5 things that you can see around you, and that these are things that you can concretely see that are in your immediate vicinity. So it could be on the desk in front of you, but it could also be out of the window, for example. So label 5 things that you can see, and then say them out loud as well. And then 4 things that you can feel. So I can feel the ground beneath me, my feet. I can feel my table at home, can feel my mouse pad, for example. 3 things that you can touch. Sorry, I've done the feeling one. 3 things that you can hear as well. So sounds. It might be I can hear a motorbike, a bird sound, for example, if you've got a birds outside your window. And these again are concrete sounds that are in your surroundings as well. So we've done the 5 things that you can see, exactly. 4 things that you can touch and feel, and 3 things that you can hear. And then the other senses are smell. So 2 things that you can smell, as well. And it could be a flower that's nearby you, for example, or a herb, a spice. And then the last thing is one thing that you can taste, even if it's taking a drink of water, for example, as well. So it's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It takes a bit longer than the other exercise, which I described as a grounding exercise. But again, it helps you regain a sense of control and puts you in context. Again, just within your immediate environment.
Yeah.
As well.
And before we take a question from the floor, there's an interesting question coming up. I'd like to ask you, so how do we expand our capacity to live with this that we don't know for certain? Like, for instance, I may have an idea that this is right because it's right for me, but how do I expand my ability to acknowledge that it may not be right for others, which is also about living with ambiguity, that it's
and
not
I think,
so certain. Yeah. How do I do that?
It's really challenging to do. It's also a lot to do with, again, coming back to a little bit compassion, but on the perspective of empathy. So being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is in effect empathy. So you can have strongly held beliefs and values, but they might be different to what the person in front of you has. And one thing is not to necessarily give a positive or negative judgment. My values are mine, and I believe them to be important, but they might be different to your values, yeah. And it's okay that they're different as well. So one thing is acknowledging people do have different values, different beliefs, and then not giving a judgment, a positive or a negative judgment to them. And then the third thing is, again, being able to reflect and say, okay, why has that person got those values or beliefs? What's been their upbringing? What's the position that they're sitting in? They might be a very stressed single parent at home with children, and have a different view on how the pandemic is affecting them and their community compared to myself, for example. So it's about empathy and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and that's something that you kind of need to practice daily. And so I would say it's more that empathy and compassion with another person, and not having that value judgment over them.
Thank you. That was very enlightening. I will practice it, surely.
It's very difficult.
No, I think it's a great answer. I'll practice. So there's a question from Sugna on LinkedIn. What about the kids, children in the long run? What are the effects on their mental health? And as you've been the co-chair of the IFRC, and I know that you've been working a lot with children and also been producing been instrumental in producing the book for children on COVID. Yeah, talk about children a bit and what the effect is.
Yeah, so children is quite a broad age range. Obviously, a child from a developmental perspective, children go through a rapid development from 0 to 18 years, if you look at the childhood perspective. So how you work with a child that's in infancy, so preschool, the first 1,000 days, so 0 to 3 years, and is quite different to working with adolescents, for example, 15, 16-year-olds. For very young children or younger children, they take their cues from the adults and their environment around them. So if you are an infant, you'll take your cue usually from your primary caregivers, which is usually your mother or your father. And so if they are very stressed, the mother is stressed, if the father is stressed, the child will feel it. And the child will feel it in terms of when they're being breastfed or when they're being played with. They will understand that their parent is stressed. They can feel it. They can pick up on the cues. With adolescents, they tend to be more advanced in terms of language, their vocal ability, and their behavior. But across the age range with children, it's critical that we are honest with them, and that we say to them, even if it's a 5-year-old child speaking to you or your teenage child speaking to you, it's okay for you to say, I don't have the answer here. I don't know when this is going to end. I don't know when we're going to be vaccinated. And to be honest with them and say, look, I don't know the answers here. And the children appreciate that. They can understand, okay, my parents don't know, but they've given me a concrete answer. And getting children back into school is preferable, but also if they're not able to go back to school, giving them a sense of routine at home. Children respond very well to routine. So if you are homeschooling your child, is to set up within your home environment as much as possible a routine, so that they are able to learn, and so your day is a little bit more structured, because children respond well to routines and to structure. And they also respond very well to play and to physical hugs, and also having fun. Just because we're living in a pandemic doesn't mean that children still can't have fun, still can't laugh, still can't play. So normal childhood is just as important.
Yeah, and the question was also on the effects in the mental health. And what we do know, let me just add, because we've just been working with material for teachers for children, that children are pretty affected in their social learning, and actually social learning and learning, they go very much together.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. But I need to push on, because there's another good question you need to answer. So this is from Shah, who's asking, saying that working from home is very stressful while dealing with children and other family members. And is it possible to manage both effectively? This relates to ambiguous feelings. You want to attend to more than you actually can.
Yes.
So
and there's multiple demands on your time, work, as well as your family, as well as your child demands. Yes, it is stressful. It's not optimal, the situation that we have. And as I mentioned before, the first thing is being forgiving to yourself and saying, I am managing the situation to the best of my ability at the moment, and telling yourself, because that's important. So it's not beating yourself up.
We're telling you, Shah.
Yes, we're telling you, Shah, you are already doing a good job. So don't beat yourself up and look at the negative and say, I wish I'd done that. At the end of the day, again, reflect and say, these are the things that went well today. Within my family. It's very difficult to be specific, because it depends very much on people's specific contexts. But again, if you can find that structure in your day, if you can find that corner where you can work for that half an hour, and then you can say, okay, now is family time, or now is a time I can dedicate to my children, and have a little bit of a schedule throughout your day, even if it's breaking it down to small periods of time. Again, it helps you find a sense of control, and it will help your children to know, okay, for this half an hour, mum is on a call, or mum is doing a piece of work, but I know that she will then come and play with me, or we can then bake that cake together, or whatever it is you're going to do. As well.
It sounds good. And the first thing that you also mentioned was that actually acknowledging that this is a fact. This is so. That's also very important. You mentioned that before. And there's a final question, because we're approaching our time. It is that if you believe in color therapy for mental health, and I'm not quite sure what is meant by that question, so let's answer it in a very broad sense. Will you do that?
Yeah, my interpretation of the question, which may not be the correct one, I apologize, is the value or the meaning behind certain colors. And it can be what the color blue, for example, or the color green. It can often be associated with particular emotions or with particular feelings. The same as the color red is usually associated with anger or fire, in some cases intense energy or intense heat around something. Green in some cultures can be related as a calming color, particularly in Islam, for example. Spring, freshness, new growth as well. So I think that means that if you can help people reflect on colors, or if they can have positive colors in their surroundings to help them have a more positive sense of well-being. But I don't know if there's something that you would also like to add on color therapy.
The only thing that I'm thinking of is this very excellent breathing exercise, where you breathe in a color you like and breathe out a color that you dislike, that symbolizes what you don't want to embody right now. So I think that could be related to it. So far, so good. We've been around a lot of topics. We've touched upon living with and tolerating ambiguity. You've given us ideas for what we can do to live through this very challenging time of uncertainty, where there's lots of ambiguities. Do you have any final words of wisdom for us, please?
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is words of wisdom, but this is an unusual emergency because it's been particularly protracted, particularly long term, and we don't yet have an endpoint in most countries around the world. So we don't know enough information about the long-term effects of this. We don't know it from a biological perspective, the effects on the body. Long COVID, for example, people are talking about with the biological implications of COVID. And we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be in society either, and within the families. And again, that's living with the uncertainty, living with that incomplete amount of information. So anything that you can do on a daily basis, the small steps, the small techniques you can do to help you regain that sense of control, to help you be able to sit and reflect and label your feelings and the unease, and then to say to yourself, it is okay. I'm acknowledging these problems, but it's okay that I'm feeling like this, and I can still go about my day, will actually equip you to be able to manage this emergency in the long term. Because it's most likely going to continue for the rest of this year, and certainly in other parts of the world, also into 2022 as well.
And in some parts of the country, it comes on top or adds on to an ongoing or to upcoming or existing emergencies. Yeah.
And I think the final thing I would also say is Red Cross volunteers that work a lot with refugees and migrants, and also volunteers that work with restoring family links programs. You are living and breathing and interacting with people that by their very existence are managing ambiguity on a day-to-day basis. So if it's a restoring family links program, there's often an ambiguous loss associated with it. If you're a refugee and a migrant, you don't have all the information. You're living on a day-to-day existence and you're making the best of your day. So I would also say learn from the people that you're supporting, that you're working with, because these groups have mastered the art of managing ambiguity, actually.
I think that was a beautiful way to end the session. So thank you very much, dear listeners and viewers. And thank you, Sarah, for being with us on this talk on managing ambiguity during COVID-19.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you, Ia, as well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.